Susan Baraz. Good morning, good afternoon, good night.
Here it's morning.
It is morning because you're in Los Angeles.
Exactly.
You're doing a lot since many times for photography because you're co-chair of Lucie Award. You're also the head of judging for IPA, International Photography Award. You're also co-curator with your friend Hossein Farmani for the exhibition about climate change, which is something very important nowadays. And in 2003, you began with that Lucie Award project that you told me a few days ago, that what it is now was not beginning in that way. No, it begins in another way.
Exactly. Yes.
How it was.
Well, in one way, it's amusing because my friend Hossein, as you mentioned, Hossein Farmani, has sometimes such good ideas that they're overwhelmingly good, so you just don't want to begin them. So we were walking down a street by his office, and he was saying, wonder why there isn't an Academy Award for photographers. There's the Grammys, the Tonys, the Emmys, and of course the Oscars. Why isn't there anything for photography? And usually when he asks questions like that, I kind of walk a little faster because I know I'm going to be involved in something that, never existed. But it was such a good question. Why not? It was preceding so many things and such a major impact on life. And so we were in the middle of our AIDS event, Focus on AIDS, and it was in the office, and we were putting together the catalog for that, and we were saying, wonder what the name could be. And then I started looking up the names in Greek of light, the meaning of light, and one of the names was Lucie. And he's in the other side of the office, and this is 2:00 in the morning, and I said, Hossein, the name should be Lucie. And of course, once you name something, it's yours. It's too late to go back. And that's how it started. That it didn't exist before, and thank goodness it exists now. So.
It exists with a long tradition because it's, the first ceremony was in 2003, 2004.
Yes.
And since then, every year in New York at the Carnegie Hall, you're inviting a lot of, there's quite a few awards because you involved the trajectory of the photographer, the achievement, which means 50 years working, which is not, which is not current. A photographer who works since 50 years at least has 65, 70 years old or something.
Oh, yeah, and older. Our one of our last ones was a woman in Japan who was 102.
Oh, Jesus.
But most of these people that who are icons in photography have never received a statue, a recognition, and their photographs because they are iconic, but yet you don't know the personage, behind it.
Yes.
So this was to mostly say thank you for the impact you've had on our lives.
On photography field also, because you're working a lot on that stage in a way. In Europe, we have maybe another kind of traditions in terms of awards, like Niepce Award and so on. But it's not on the same aim. You give a lot of visibility also to the young talent generation, which is fabulous. By the way, I want to thank you because this year you invite me to be on board with you for the best of show exhibitions we have.
Thank you for doing that. That was an honor for us. Truly.
Well, it was shared. It was an honor shared because really, first of all, whatever you can ask, I will be there always.
Thank you, and you're so wonderful.
And this show, which is now on view at the festival in Palencia, Festival International of Photography in Palencia, which we celebrate the first edition this year, it was for me very interesting because at least I had the chance to have a kind of global vision of the new creation, professional, unprofessional, amateur. And you know what, Susan, what I was really interested in is that I saw that young photographers right now are interested by the others.
Yes.
And it's very human. There's a kind of another chapter about humanism or photography about the others. And that's really fabulous because on the last 20, 30 years, photographers were much more interested in urbanism and then printing in large scale. And it was almost something like a difficult language to afford in a way. And right now we get back to smaller size, something much more intimate, much more in connection with people. In every single pictures in that best of show, there are people.
Yes.
Nice.
I agree. There's also the world, because especially this past year, it's become more united because we're all facing a common enemy, which was the COVID, is the COVID. It continues to be so. And I think there's much more empathy globally than there ever was on that score. But I mean, visually too, it's amazing to me because you're right. The images that you see come from everywhere in the world, and it's usually to identify people even in visually their commonality. Even an image in Afghanistan, if it's something about, culturally, there's an identity anyway with what or there's a curiosity to find out, what is different about that? And your best of show that you did is very much, a part of that. It's the center of it for all of the work that you picked. In a way, it's you have both kind of aspects. Of course, you have a global vision of something, and you have the specificity of a culture. But I was really impressed by this, and also really impressed by many photographers in the selection and out of the selection. I was not able to afford everybody, but there were so much great fortunately, because there were thousands. So
and they were very focusing also on kids, on new generations, and Jamie Johnson or other photographers, what I found really beautiful. And now also, this is a little bit the center of our conversation. And really, Susan, I would like to get on a specific point with you, which is the talent of the new generation. What can we do for this new generation? A few weeks ago, I was talking with Marta Gilly. She was the director of Jeux de Paume in France, a very important museum of photography. And now she's the head of the School of Photography in Arles. And we had that conversation. And finally, we arrived to the conclusion that we probably, the government would probably have, not to oblige, because it's not a good word, but in a certain way, to put on the scene the new generation and to say the museums, well, look, in your program, you should have certain % of your exhibition dedicated to young people because they don't have places to show their work.
Yes, exactly. I agree with you on that too. but there's more and more interest in photography with young people. The Lucie's has a mentoring program and scholarship programs. And my dear friend Hossein has established in several different places, quite a number of them, and growing, like a House of Lucie, a place where people can see exhibits of new talent and that they would never be able to show their work to. He's doing one outside of Bologna. He has land that he bought outside of Bangkok. He's working on one in Athens. In Budapest, he's like, I don't know, the story that Johnny Appleseed, that he spreads apple seeds everywhere and orchards grow. Well, Hossein is doing it in photography. But there in Iran, he has an amazing center there. So, it's people like Hossein that is really spreading that kind of word. But the interesting thing, I wanted to get to the IPA, that the pros and the non-pros were not so distinct from one another. They could have easily overlapped. The talent has come to such a high level, in my estimation, that it's hard to say, oh, you're an amateur and you're a professional. Yeah. And that's one comment.
The scale, or yes, the level are quite.
Yes.
I mean,
exactly. It's very high. Do you want to know a funny story of how the IPA started?
No, no, I don't know.
Because we had this grand title, the International Photography Awards, which was in 2000, also in 2003, 2002, the International Photography Awards. And so we sent out, Hossein designed a website, and even that was new. Nobody was really online. And it seems like so short a time ago that this wasn't even in existence, what we're doing now, of course. And so we sent out flyers, we sent out postcards, we sent out for the get your competition in an entry into the International Photography Awards, blah, blah, blah. And we were in his office, and nothing came in. and we but like weeks of like nothing coming into the office. And well, that was a bust. That wasn't a great idea. Maybe, people don't know enough or whatever, or they're not interested enough, or, oh my God, what did we do, kind of thing. And then 1 week, and this was weeks later, boxes started arriving. I could actually cry. Boxes started arriving, boxes and boxes and boxes that were collected and then sent to the office, to the point where we couldn't move. There were so many boxes from all over, and wrapped in not even envelopes, in textiles from Africa. It sounds crazy, but everywhere people sent in images of just asking to see their story.
Yeah, because they really
see their story.
And they really need visibility to exist in a way. But where are the places where they can show their work? That's what you're doing, a huge work in terms of visibility for this young talent. But not also. I mean, there's a lot of achievement of fine art, fashion,
right,
documentary. There's a lot of. But specifically, this is the main question right now, because Lucie is all in institutions, settled on the scene since a long time, with your board, with your activities,
yes,
with a lot of things, and probably creating each time, because knowing you, I'm sure that along with Hossein, you must invent things almost every day, for photography. But I'm a little bit worried about that question, where can they really find their place? And sometimes Susan and I, both of us, we have some conversation, look at this work, or contact this, and it's our duty to help these people to
absolutely it's their gift, and it's needed to be presented to the world somehow or another, and it's getting limited because galleries themselves, I think, are turning into play. They used to be ages ago. You could say, "I'm sending you somebody. Look at this wonderful work," and by and large, they would consider taking them on and doing a show. Now it's, do you have a book that goes with this, or do you have where did you show before? You know, I mean, how do you, it's the catch-22 of photography. You know, I don't have an exhibit. Can you give me an exhibit? Well, you didn't have an exhibit before, so why would I take a chance to give you one now? Even if the work is valued at warranting an exhibit.
But I have another idea. What about, in our festival in Palencia, I did something that I find quite interesting. First, I had to manage between William Klein exhibition and Joël Meyerowitz, and I said, well, I'm going to put them together. I said, well, no, of course, our best of show should dialogue with a mentor, with someone from another generation that ended almost his trajectory of photography, and then here we have the second generation, which will be the continuity of this work, and that would be very nice if we could get a kind of program like mentor and mentees, settled photographers along with a young photographer, like a parrainage, something like that.
Well, I mean, those are like, aren't those kind of like portfolio reviews or things like that you would be thinking about?
Well, something like that, or maybe an exhibition of Meyerowitz and an exhibition along with a young photographer, and that would be very nice because
it would be.
They should carry to help to raise the new generation.
You could do a contest of guess who's the mentor and who's the mentee.
Yeah, sometimes the mentee learn much more than the mentor has to teach. But
exactly.
By the way, talking about teaching, it's just a kind of parenthesis like that. How someone like you who studied at Fashion Institute in New York in the late 60s. How?
Yes. I wish it were later, but yes.
Well, we should maybe not say that, but at the end of the last century, something.
Yes. When dinosaurs were around.
Don't say that. But the question is, how have you been involved in photography? Well, because at that time you were surrounded by many people, very high level artists.
Yes, it was the height of it, in so many ways, and as you know, that I had in my class and as my best friend finally in FIT was Antonio Lopez. Antonio, just about the most brilliant illustrator ever. And we were very, very close. And I took fashion illustration. And of course, he was in fashion illustration, but he would sit with me next to me in class. And of course, I would be drawing what was the model that we had. And he was taking the model and then inventing everything after that. And I mean, it was the good news. He was sitting next to me, and the bad news because I wanted to kill him. That time, there were so many brilliant people from that particular class even from that school. But I also minored in photography when I was there. It was part of my curiosity, even though it wasn't even something that was collectible then. Yeah, I mean, who wants a photograph? Anybody supposedly could take a photograph, kind of thing. It wasn't valued. But the interesting thing is, and then I wound up, of course, modeling for Antonio for many years, and lucky me. But the photographers were shown examples of Antonio's work, Richard Avedon, for one, to emulate what he could do in his illustration to make them do in photography. And so that was pretty, I have examples even of things that you would never believe was Richard Avedon's, because it was so Antonio in its concepts. It was remarkable. But it just evolved, all of this love of photography itself. And
because in the band you had also Bill Cunningham, Norman Parkinson, all the photographers also so close, because at that time they were really market for fashion photography, And
exactly.
By the way, Antonio probably went to Paris at that time, but because there were no work for fashion illustration into the magazine, it was time for photography at that time.
No, it was kind of like a dying thing here, although we did so many Fashion of the Times magazines, and he was really known. But then I got married to a photographer and we went to live in Paris, and 2 weeks later Antonio and Juan came to Paris, and we did Elle magazine. We did a whole bunch of images for Elle, including the cover. It was the first time an illustration combined with a photograph was on the cover of any magazine, never mind Elle. But it was a great time to be an artist of any kind, Yeah. It was just everything was happening everywhere, in clothes, in art, in everywhere. It was. I feel sorry now because it can never, I think, be that exciting a time again.
That's exactly the next question I had, because all that time, 70s, 80s, and then when they passed away both, it was the end of a chapter in a way, no? And
totally, in music, everything. It was. Like Forrest Gump, he was in the right time all the time of his life. I'm the Forrest Gump in the arts.
and do you think that when you began to create the Lucie Foundation also, and the International Photography Awards, it's in a way to get back to those times?
There's no question. There's no question about it. But what preceded the Lucies was when Antonio had AIDS, and he was staying with me in Santa Monica. When he passed away, Hossein and myself and a number of our friends decided to do a benefit for AIDS in 1986, 87. It didn't exist, anything with that, especially somebody saying you're going to do an art thing for AIDS, because nobody was even mentioning AIDS. Yeah. But we got together and we got this, Robert Berman did he thought of the name Focus on AIDS, and we did a photography auction benefit. And that was in October of 1987. Antonio died March St. Patrick's Day, March 17th. And we organized this whole thing, and we did a big blowout auction benefit specifically for AIDS. And
but at that time, in '87, it was just the beginning of the market of photography. You mentioned that a few minutes ago. And who was really someone who created also the market for photography was Howard Greenberg in '81.
Totally.
And he made a lot for market, for collectionism, for etc., for institutions also. So why photography at that time? How it was just the beginning?
Well, because we wanted to do an art, quote unquote, art form. But you're right. The photography was brand new, and I guess it was Hossein who said it. We should do a photo auction, because how could you sell paintings and things like that? It wouldn't make very much sense. And so we did photography, but I wish in 1987 I had bought the pieces that were available for auction, because I would have been pretty much set in life now. I mean, seriously, we had Andre Cortege, we had all these incredible photographers' works that were donated by even photo galleries that were not even that important because it was new. And oh my God, I'm kicking myself thinking about it. Oh, and I remember David LaChapelle.
Yeah.
He begged, oh, could I be in this, even if it sells for $100 or something? And he gave us pieces, and I mean, it was amazing. But it was a very beginning, naissance of even photography. Never mind a photo auction, and we raised something like $50,000 in one evening.
Oh, Jesus, a fortune.
Which was a lot of money. And we didn't know what we were even doing. So, it was a fabulous evening. Wolfgang Puck was making pizzas, and Michael Chow, Mr. Chow's, sent over food, and it was crazy and fabulous. And we gave it all to the only thing that was present at the time for AIDS, which was AIDS Project Los Angeles. It was the only place that you could, at the time, donate that was an AIDS organization. You know.
So it was the really, really beginning of the projects at Hossein and you at the early 2000s.
That's how I met him.
You settled, no?
He was my gift, I said, in my mind, from Antonio, because they remind me of one another. They're very... Antonio looked like he was like this party guy and all of that, and Hossein could too. But they're very inside of them, shy and soft spoken, and all of those things that I don't know. They to me are. I'm constantly stopping myself from calling Hossein Antonio, but I've known him for so long. I've been lucky, very, very lucky to go from somebody that I lost, that I love so dearly, to finding someone that is been in my life and continues to be that way. Very blessed.
So you both play a beautiful and very important role in contemporary photography, because, of course, photography has the same power as doing that kind of event you did in the frame of the AIDS in '87. And then after the achievement, all you do for photography has that kind of recognition also to many people who are working on the dark side of the world, and nobody pays attention to them on categories which are not easy to deal on. Sport photography, on well, fashion, it may be easiest, but in a way you put them on the scene, and probably you help them in their own professional trajectory, which is really, really necessary. What's going on with photography right now with all the digital things, and everybody can be a photographer in 5 minutes in a way, but there's still that class of photographers that still has a very clear vocabulary that belongs to them and a very clear language that makes the difference with the others.
Well, that's true. But I mean, I was, when digital photography was starting out, I was saying, who would be collecting digital photography? You could, just keep it going and repeat it, and it's not a value like you would. I mean, I have a large collection of silver gelatin prints, and I've had forever. And yet, look, what didn't one just sell for like millions and millions of dollars? And so even that's evolving. I at this point, never say never. In and especially in art, and especially in photography, it just evolves into the next thing. And I'm one of the reasons I love the Lucies is because we honor the people that were the pioneers in a way of this art form. And I remember one of the speeches that I made. We're going to honor all of these famous, iconic masters. And I said, and not one of them has ever said, we'll fix it in post to their image, Yeah. I mean, it just, we'll fix it in post, and it's so true. They didn't have the tools that is now easy to make, in a commercial setting, a car that's still in a studio be looking like it's, traversing a place in Italy or something like that, the Appian Way.
Yeah. What I find really, really nice also with the project is that we always knew that there's a kind of... there's two temporalities. There's a temporality of the one who is taking his pictures and is doing his archive. And then there's a temporality of the time when the public, the institutions, and all the people involved in art will recognize the work. But many times it's too late. And yes. There's maybe sometimes 50 years. And many times, and this is the aim of what we do on our side from Decoma Photography, is that many times we rescue some archives that
yes.
really disappear completely. And many times you see on the 20th century, the first victims are women photographers.
Absolutely.
However, they took part of the really beginning of the history of photography. Many times they are the first one who disappears. And we have to get back, to take all these things and put it on the scene again. And that's really important to settle their figure and to say, well, why finally male photographers are much more well settled in history of photography, and they do not have risk, and
yes.
Others, women photographers. But at the end, all is question about equality. I mean, I see that in the award that you give to photographers, there's no award for female photographers. There's
no award for female photographers. We had an award. Women in photography early on. But I mean, personally, I think if a woman is outstanding, and we've had many outstanding awards to women in photography, it bothers me personally. This is not to say that it's not a valid question. It bothers me personally that they're singled out for like to be the exception, yes. rather than encompassing all the world of photography. But we've honored lifetime achievement woman that was in London, Jane Bond, who we basically introduced who she was, and because no one knew who she was. It's up to, in some ways, the industry itself or the community itself to make their presence known. That's the failure, is that they're out there and they're just I collect Lillian Bassman, one of my heroes. And in fact, she got a Lucie Award, and it was the only time I was absolutely tongue-tied, just even meeting her, this little diminutive person. And I was like, oh my God, she's the same time as Avedon. She has, such brilliance in her work, and she's not as known, but that's a failure of the world, not her failure. And so we honored her, Mary Ellen Mark, all these major talents and even you introduced me to Margaret Watkins, and that was mind blowing because I love so much of her work, and I'd never heard of her before. And
no, she disappeared completely. And at that time, a woman photographer had a kind of male figure that sustained them. But however, there were some exceptions, like Berenice Abbott, for example. Margaret Watkins was one of them. And many women photographers had to have men very close to them to sustain the economy, but some
exactly.
not. And those one had a very short career. Margaret Watkins, 10 years. That's it.
Yeah, but it's not that but that's notorious in any way. In paintings too. They never were recognized. Or recognized, much later, and a smaller amount of their due was given them. Not that they're, in the leagues with the grand masters and all. It's women in general. I can't be specifically pointing to photography and as why not women, because you could say that in almost anything.
It's everywhere. Yeah. But it's much better than 20 years ago. And
totally.
Even in terms of photography, the same also. You were talking about the main monsters of the 20th century. And finally, you see that many photographers, even unknown, and not talking about the case of Vivian Maier, which is something really specific. But I'm sure that behind Vivian Maier, there's a lot of others Vivian Maier about to raise. And that's a very beautiful thing, because at least an amateur photographer can get and can sit in history of photography and settle just on in a case, just close to Arbus, to Robert Frank, to all
right.
And that's
an equal footing.
Yes, and that's really encourages, because the young people right now who cannot sustain themselves economically through their photography see there an opportunity to also have their own place somewhere.
Right.
And maybe sometimes people like you, people like me, we have just to help them to find their place. And it's sometimes nothing, but do it.
Absolutely. I totally agree. I do portfolio reviews, and I saw a couple of women that were really interesting and had interesting things to say. And I will especially push that. I want to push that, you have to see this one's work or that one's work. And, it bothers me inside of me what you're saying, because it's the reality of the way things are. But I do think it's changing slowly. Even when President Biden was making his State of the Union, behind him was a female vice president and a female Speaker of the House. And I went to the TV and I took a picture of it. And I got so emotional just looking at that image. And now I'm just waiting for the three to be the female too. The president at one point will be it eventually as well. But that was such an image. I couldn't believe it. It was shocking. It's normalcy or whatever it was, I guess, that visual.
Right now it is. And she's Black.
And she's Black and South Asian too, so it's the perfect combination. Of all of it in one, and it's remarkable. And I'm very optimistic on that score.
The hill we climb.
Yeah. Slowly.
And we're all pushing in the right direction for sure, of course. Exactly. And we still have to push. Look, I mean, this Amanda Gorman said it clearly. I mean, she's 22 years old and she was there for this ceremony. I mean, young people arrive on the scene and yes, they have many things to say and I mean, the near future in terms of creativity, creation, and so on. And look, our friend Sandro Miller, for example, and is totally among all that generation and is creating. And he did such a beautiful work we present right now in the festival, Glory, My Hair, My Soul, My Freedom, which is about the American culture, African American culture, and how. What does that mean, the identity and so on? So all that questions are on the scene and all that questions are worked on by the new generation. And it's really fabulous because there's something really rich in the air. And maybe something is getting back. Why not? Not the 80s.
I think so. I believe so. I'm optimistic about after this dreadful thing where we had to live through this, and unfortunately, some places are still living through it. In India, right now, is really a disaster. But the world itself and the people in it, they're now more than ever, I think, connected. And understand that how they're connected.
Yes. And
ones that are awake and aware. yeah, but soon, very soon, I'm sure. And one question about the Lucie and the project in itself. Which direction is it going to? Is there something new you're working on, or is there some new dimension you would like to include, or it's secret? Oh, no. I would tell you, I'm going to know better because Hossein is coming here tomorrow. So it's always, we don't stop talking. So once we get together. So, I mean, as I said, he's doing all of these projects of different exhibit places all over the world. And it can only bring the message, what your message that you want, and of course what I want as well, is having photography be so completely a part of everyone's life. And so he's bravo to him. It's just amazing. And we've done amazing things in photography, by photography. The Focus on AIDS, we built a children's AIDS hospital in India.
Beautiful.
From money raised. And it's the only single standalone AIDS hospital in the world. And photography can just move mountains in many different ways, emotionally, too, and as I said, a familiarity that somebody that's suffering and hurting, you understand that, and you want to change it. You want to change somebody's life because you see a visual or the lives of people. For me, it's the most powerful medium. Even if you don't want to see something, once you've seen it in an image, you can't get it out of your mind. It's too late to erase it. It's already impacted your brain, you know. Oh, I don't want to look at pictures of war or whatever it is. Well, you see one, you won't be able to take it away. You know, how do you? And the commonalities. I think that's the most amazing thing about the IPA, because we have maybe 20,000 entries before you get to curate it. And there's just, you know, somebody's joy in Pakistan is the same joy in the United States or Spain or wherever. It is the family of man. The family of man was ahead of its time. I always think about that exhibit, Steichen's exhibit, and the book of it, which I have over here on my shelf. It just was really saying it all in one little exhibition. How, and you saw it in the photography. I mean, all these people taking the exact same thing, women, you know, with their babies, or giving birth or death or whatever. It's all there in a photograph, and it's all relatable.
So each photograph is a kind of message, no, that can go everywhere without any language.
Exactly.
And I mean, it's a kind of power, no? A kind of
absolutely. And we have an award now, the Photo Impact Award.
Yes.
And that's been added to the award ceremonies, and it's amazing that one image could resonate all over, you know, and it will be the same image that everybody would relate to or feel in their gut something. I remember years ago, the little boy, the 3-year-old boy that was drowned on the beach, and he was with his little sneaker. Yeah. How do you unforget that image? And it did change the idea of immigration and people that are trying to come out so desperately trying to get another way of life. And the same with the father and his little baby with the baby's daughter's arm around his neck, who drowned also. I mean, it's a commonality that everyone will react to, that one image, you know. And so now we've given an award for somebody that was there at the time, that took it. That I'm very happy about that part.
Yes, you know, this kind of impact. I've always thought that, for example, we were talking about Marilyn Mark, for example. How could she face the reality just in front and staying with her cold blood and taking pictures with such impact? I mean, she must be very strong. You met her, you knew her.
Yes.
And you know, perfect.
I mean, by herself, she just ventured out, you know. I love her work.
And
I have some pieces of her work.
And she saved so many lives.
Yep.
With her
the same. Yeah, I agree with James Nachtwey. Same thing, because who knew about the Romanian orphans? Yeah. I mean, he went in and he photographed these horrible, hard to look at images, but it was an awareness that really changed things in people's lives. Also, adoptions and all of that. He opened the doors to that. I mean, just that's what's so wonderful about photography. I mean, it really has such a power in an image, you know.
It's our duty to continue, Suzanne, We just have to follow.
That's an easy thing. I have a passion for it, even though I'm not a photographer. I mean, I take photographs all the time, but it's not but I love it so much. And you know it when you see it, which is also strange too, because it's inexplicable. Why do you get this visceral gut reaction to something? You can't logically even understand it, but it's there. And then you want to just, I want to push you. I want to help you. I want to engage other people in seeing your work, kind of thing.
Beautiful. Congratulations for this decision, for this project you have that involves so many people, so many levels also of photographers, unknown, less unknown, achievement. And that's beautiful, this kind of whole community getting once per year in October each year at Carnegie Hall to receive and to celebrate photography as a language.
Hopefully you'll be coming. Hopefully Carnegie Hall will be opened up because there's, thank goodness, so many more people to discover that have been. We were going to give a lifetime award to this African photographer, Peter Magubani, who's 88 years old and was ready to fly to New York for his Lucie statue and his homage to him, and of course it wasn't meant to be this past year. Yeah. So hopefully we'll be doing it again and discovering new vintage photographers. Never mind their work being vintage; they are vintage.
Probably, and we will share it, of course. And I will be very happy. Susan, whatever we can do to follow and continue the work you do over there in the other side of the world, we would be happy. To follow the experience of the Best of Show has been beautiful for me because it has been a kind of radiography of what photographers are focusing on. And I was so happy that the humanity gets back, and that's really beautiful. So again, whatever we can do together, I would be happy to share with you. And
that would be. That makes my heart soar. You are so special to everyone in the especially in the photo community. What you do and your festivals and your eye. You can't create somebody's eye, and you have an amazing one. And I'm so grateful that you donated that part of you to the IPA, the Best of Show. It was a beautiful selection you had put together, and thank you so much for traveling it. Oh my goodness, everyone's thrilled to have you a part of it.
Thank you also for your time. It has been a great conversation. We will meet soon, Susan, I promise.
Oh, I hope so. I want a hug. I forgot what that's like.
Yeah, but soon, very soon. Once we get vaccine, I hope it will be before this fall. We meet on October 18 in New York. I hope.
Sounds like a plan.
Yes.
All right.
And
Thank
again, congratulations.
you so much for inviting me to do this talk with you. I love it. Thank you. I'm grateful for all of it.
Take care, Susan.